Welcome in to the Hoth Hangout podcast. We're glad to have you here joining us for this one. We are officially on our second set of 50 episodes, episode 51, coming at you here today. We want to welcome you in. Joey, hope you're doing well, my friend. What's going on?
Oh, still recovering from the COVID, still got a little cough, so I've got my nice little tea here with my, if you like the mug here.
For those who are listening to the audio version, Joey's holding up a mug that says, would that say Joey doesn't make food?
No, Joey doesn't share food.
Oh, Joey doesn't share food.
Yeah, from
That's
the
better.
from Friends, if you
Yeah,
don't know the reference there. So,
there you
but
go.
yeah,
Nice.
got my tea, got my cough drops and water, and I'm ready to talk Ahsoka episode 7.
Nice. Yes, we have lots of episode 7 stuff to talk about. It's going to be a great one. Definitely a fantastic episode that we got yesterday. Make sure if you haven't checked out the reaction, that is now available on the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel, which of course we want to say if you're not subscribed there, check us out on YouTube at Hoth Hangout on that platform. Thank you to the 330 of you that are subscribed over there. And if you're an audio podcast listener, you can always catch the podcasts available anywhere you get them on Thursday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern, whether it's Spotify, Apple, or anywhere else in the podcast universe, and leave a 5-star review on those platforms. We would very much appreciate that. You can also catch us on the socials, including TikTok, Instagram, and X at Hoth Hangout on each of those. As well, you can also email us anytime with your Star Wars or just general questions, hothhangout@gmail.com. We're always checking in there as well. And as Joey previously mentioned, today we are going to be breaking down and talking some Ahsoka episode 7. Before we do that, we do have just a couple noteworthy things that happened in the world of Star Wars in the last week. Prior to hopping into it, I do want to take 10 seconds just real quickly to show off the new sweatshirt I got.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
for those of you watching or listening to the podcast rather than watching it, I'm rocking a Hoth Glacier National Park sweatshirt today. So came in the mail today. I was like, all right, I know what I'm wearing for the podcast tonight.
That is a beauty.
Yeah. To kick off our a little bit of news we got before we start talking some Ahsoka episode 7. A cool piece of news, kind of a cool nugget here came out. For those who know Guillermo del Toro, a very renowned director. I think his most recent film might be the Pinocchio movie from like 2 years ago, I wanna
Mm.
say. But a very well-known, very well-established, a very creative director, considered probably to be like one of the best in the world, I would say arguably. Um, Along with David Goyer, who is, I guess, a well-known writer, which I did not know prior to my uh, learning this information that we're about to share. About 6 years ago, the two of them had a Star Wars movie that was slated to be about the Jedi or the origin of the Jedi, roughly 25,000 years before sort of the Skywalker trilogy that we're all very familiar with. However, it was not greenlit by Lucasfilm. And so unfortunately, that movie went by the wayside. However, it sounds like it would have been something that's pretty cool. And maybe now that we're getting, I think, something in kind of the same time frame, at least from the recent Lucasfilm announcement a few months back with the 3 upcoming movies, maybe they'll allude to some of the things that were written about in this script and in the upcoming film here in about 3 or 4 years or whenever it gets released. So yeah, kind of a cool bit of information. And then in regards specifically to this information, when it was brought up actually on Twitter or X, Guillermo del Toro, in response to sort of this podcast clip that went viral for the writer David Goyer talking about this supposed movie that was in production at one point in time, Guillermo del Toro said, "True, can't say much, maybe 2 letters," and then in quotations, J and BB. And then he said, "Is that 3 letters?" So, J and BB were really the only hints, kind of vague, and fans theorized that maybe this meant that it was a Jabba movie, Jabba the Hutt.
Jabba's a Jedi? What? Excuse
Yeah,
me?
not sure if that he was what he was going for with J and BB, but, we can always speculate, we can always theorize. Maybe someday we'll actually get the script for this. Maybe it will just happen
Mhm.
to leak itself, onto Reddit or something, who knows?
I
So,
liked your theory before we started talking the BB-8 story. Maybe
yeah.
Jedi BB-8.
Yep, the
The
first
first
droid.
droid. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
first droid to be a Jedi, and then he came all the way back in, comes full circle in the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, I can
We
see it.
should also mention here as well that, as of today, we don't really have it in our show notes because it's pretty recent news as the time of this recording, but just maybe, like, within the last 6 to 8 hours, I wanna say, the writer strike is officially ended. I saw it on social media earlier today, which is great news if you're a Star Wars fan. That means we are going to be getting more Star Wars shows sooner. So,
Yes.
big score for all Star Wars fans everywhere.
That's
We're gonna
right.
be getting
That's right,
new
Liam Neeson.
shows.
That's right, Liam Neeson. You heard him. More Star Wars.
Suck it, Liam Neeson.
That's right. Oh, we just found the name for this episode, I think.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm sure that'll do great in the title. For those that don't understand what we're talking about with the Liam Neeson thing, a few episodes back, Liam Neeson was quoted in some, article or something that he was being interviewed for and said he just thinks Star Wars is too diluted, which, the argument can be made, but recent Star Wars, Ahsoka, I think that's kind of pushed back against that statement a little bit, Liam. That's all I'm saying. So, hence, suck it, Liam.
I think he's just mad that he got he got a lightsaber through the body cavity, and he didn't make it. And
Yep.
there's
And then
at
he wants
least been
Sabine.
two other people survive those types of injuries. So maybe he's just bitter about that.
I would, to be fair, I do love the character
Oh
of
yeah, me
Qui
too.
Gon, and I love Liam Neeson. Just, I was not a fan of that take. So, might want to rethink your Star Wars take, Liam Neeson. Who knows? The other cool piece of information we got, actually, two more pieces. The first of which of those remaining two is that there is going to supposedly be a third installment of the video game franchise Star Wars Jedi. This is kind of confirmed, but not officially confirmed by the studios. The lead actor for this video game franchise, Cameron Monaghan, who is himself a huge Star Wars fan and has been a huge advocate, not only for the game but just for Star Wars in general. I know he's been to um, help me with the name, Joey. Star Wars uh, in Chicago. Um,
Oh, for Celebration, Star Wars Celebration. Are
Yes,
you talking
yes,
about? Yeah.
thank you. I blanked out on the name for some reason
Yeah.
there.
Mm-hmm.
I know he was at the most recent Star Wars celebration,
Mm-hmm.
and he's been a big advocate for just Star Wars as a whole. And so, supposedly, according to an interview with Cameron Monaghan, their third installment of the Star Wars Jedi uh, franchise is currently in the works. This is, of course, not confirmed yet by the studio Respawn Entertainment or the publisher Electronic Arts. But, if the lead actor for your franchise who's already been involved in 2 of the, pieces of production is saying this publicly, this sounds like we are confirmed, which it was probably going to happen anyways, but now it sounds like it
Mm-hmm.
might be potentially as soon as 2025. So,
Right.
we'll see. Hopefully so, and I know you and I are both big fans of the first 2 games.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll actually finish the second game by the time the third game comes out, because we still
Yeah.
are on like the third planet or something like that of the Jedi Survivor.
Yeah, yeah. We got a decent, like, 10% of the way through that game
That's
or
right.
something
Yeah,
like that. So,
it's a beautiful
we do
game
have
though.
to get back to that. It is, honestly, it
Hmm.
is. For anyone that's never seen the games, that they're really well done and really beautifully made. So,
Hmm.
exciting news that we're gonna be getting a third one, hopefully here in the next 2 years or so. Keep an eye out for that. Last piece of, I guess, kind of news, but more so just like a personal thing that we wanted to share. Something we've mentioned, I think, a few times recently, is that the Ahsoka skin officially became available in Fortnite recently. I believe it was 3 days ago, Joey. Does that sound
Yeah,
right?
on Tuesday it was actually. So at the time of
Tuesday.
this recording, it was yesterday.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
like
yeah.
roughly 24 hours ago at the time of this
Hmm.
recording. Um, that it is officially unlockable, and Joey, in fact, had blocked out, I think, like, what, like, maybe 4, 5, 6 hours to do this?
Listen, I took the day off yesterday because I had no idea how long it was going to take, because I think there were, I want to say, 9 particular things you had to do in the game in order to unlock all of the cosmetics and the skin itself. So I wasn't sure how difficult any of this would be. So I just said, you know what, I have some days I can burn. I'm gonna take the day off. And so for those who didn't see, there is a YouTube stream of me unlocking it, so you can go view that on our YouTube channel. And what I thought was going to be 4, 5, 6 hours ended up only being 2 hours. It was actually very easy to do. So I don't know if you been able to do it yet or no, not yet.
No, no. In fact, I haven't seen what it looks like in game yet, other than through the stream here on the Hoth Hangout YouTube
Oh,
channel that
nice.
you did. So I vicariously saw it secondhand through your gameplay, but I have yet to experience it for my own. So
Yeah, it's pretty
uh,
cool. It's pretty cool. And like I said, the quests for it are quite easy. There's a couple of them were like collect 3 coins at this location. I'm like, okay, I could do that, So nothing too crazy. The hardest quest was to deal a certain amount of damage with a melee weapon, which would be the lightsabers that are
yeah,
back in the game. So
saw
I
that.
I had to get, I essentially had to eliminate 4 players with it. So I think that's what it ended up happening. So pretty fun. It was a fun little quest, not too difficult. So if anybody's a Fortnite and a Star Wars fan, go make sure you do it and get that Ahsoka skin.
All I know is that I hopped on YouTube yesterday afternoon, and I saw that you had like already done the whole stream. And then I saw the timestamp and it was less than 2 hours. And I was like, whoa, he did that so fast.
That's right. Yeah.
So then I went back and I watched a little bit of it. So yeah, again, I'll mention that if you have not checked out the most recent live stream on the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel, you can catch Joey unlocking the Ahsoka Fortnite skin. So check it out. We'll try to remember to link that down in the show notes of this episode as well, for those of you interested in watching that. Very last thing, not so much news, but just something we want to reiterate that we talked about last time in last week's podcast episode, that for the 50th anniversary of the Hoth Hangout podcast, which we celebrated last week, we are doing
50th episode.
a 50th episode. Did I say 50th anniversary?
You did.
I just aged us like 50 years.
if
Um,
if we're still doing this podcast in 50 years, I wouldn't be mad about it. I'm just saying.
Mark it. We're gonna clip this, and it's gonna go viral in 50 years. Uh, the 50th episode, I should say, of the Hoth Hangout podcast we celebrated last week, and in honor of the 50th episode, courtesy of Top Shelf Breaks, a good friend of the podcast who has also been on an episode of the podcast, which we've mentioned a few times before, that courtesy of Top Shelf Breaks, he is giving away a Star Wars super box, super card box. What is the official name for this, Joey?
The product is flagship, and it's a flagship super box. We did do a little bit of a box break of it here on the
Mhm.
channel as well. So if you want to take a look at that, you could take a gander at what we pulled here. But yeah, the Chris at Top Shelf Breaks was kind enough to give us this little promotional gift to our followers. So yeah, check it out, and if you want to enter, please enter.
Yeah, shout out to Chris at Top Shelf Breaks. Again, thank you to him for providing it. And again, if you're wanting to enter in order to receive this, all you have to do is comment hashtag Hothy anniversary. That's HOTHY anniversary in the comments of the YouTube video of episode 50 or episode 51, this episode you are currently listening to, in order to be entered. This is also only available to those of you in the US, because international shipping is a little bit pricey.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
this is, of course, just for US viewers only for this giveaway. So again, hashtag Hothi anniversary if you're wanting to enter that. Well, Joey, we have gone over the news. We have discussed a few other nuggets of information we wanted to get to. Should we hop in to Ahsoka episode 7 discussion?
I would like to.
Okay. To kick us off with the Ahsoka episode 7 talk, we, on our most recent reaction video, which was posted yesterday or at the time of, or no, excuse me, it posted this morning at the time of
Mhm.
this recording. Get losing track of days here now.
Yeah.
Um, two comments we wanted to highlight from that video regarding, I think both of them have to do with Senator Zeno today.
Mhm.
And this was a key
Ziono.
scene, Ziono, excuse
Yeah.
me. I can't even like pronounce this guy's name. I just see the X in his name and I get nervous and I'm like, I don't know.
Well, it's all Twitter's fault. You see the X, you have fear in your heart.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Senator Ziono is Kaz's dad from Resistance. This is courtesy of Kid Caduceus. I hope I am not butchering that name. Both of these comments actually come from friends of the podcast. So shout out to Kid Caduceus and Out Vesuvi for these two comments. But Kid Caduceus says Senator Ziono is Kaz's dad from Resistance, although we didn't really get much out of his allegiance in the series. So, for those that don't know, Star Wars Resistance is an animated show which follows the story of Kaz. I have personally not seen this show.
Mhm.
Joey, I know you have seen. I know more than me. Have you seen all of it?
Yeah, I watched both seasons of it, yes.
Okay, and this may be something we do following the Ahsoka
Yeah.
hype, when we're, coming up with some more ideas for episodes, maybe in the late 50s, perhaps, we might do a Resistance review and breakdown, especially because 'cause I've never seen it, and I'm definitely interested,
Mhm.
especially now that they're starting to incorporate stuff from Resistance into, the more mainstream Star Wars stuff like Ahsoka. So,
Right.
basically, all that to say that Senator Ziono is kind of pushing back against definitely against Hera and a little bit against Mon Mothma,
Yep.
and has this sort of not kind, not friendly attitude
Not a
towards
good
Hera.
none got a good vibe, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah. And so, on the same note, as Kid Caduceus's comment, Aunt Vesuvi says, "Thanks, Ben and Joey. It's strongly suggested in Resistance that Senator Ziono is sympathetic to the First Order.
Mhm.
So this would make a lot of sense, judging from the way we've
Yeah.
seen him act in this show. You and I mentioned when we saw him for the first time and kind of saw his demeanor and his language that it seemed like he was an Imperial plant or that he had
Yeah.
Imperial ties at the very least. So, um, you know, Senator Ziono, not
Yep.
not looking like a true member of the New Republic in that regard.
Yeah. I'm excited to see because he's one of those characters that you could easily also forget about. You notice him because he's causing a ruckus, but then, episodes later, you kind of forget about his existence. But he may come in, later down the line, maybe more of a season 2 type of storyline,
Yep.
that can really put a wrench in the entire deal here.
Yeah, I could definitely see him teaming up with Thrawn in season 2, I'm just saying. Taking his side over Mon Mothma's. Be on the lookout for it. Thank you again to both of those who provided those comments. We appreciate you, and again, for anyone that's listening to this episode of the podcast or any future reaction episode or podcast episode, always feel more than welcome and free to comment, and hopefully we can use some great comments here in the podcast breakdowns, and we can discuss them as well. All right. Well, to kick off episode 7, Joey and I mentioned during our reaction that we're like, man, we love Hera, we love Mon Mothma, but we kind of want to spend all of our time this episode on Peridia. And then, of course, the episode opens with this New Republic, Council Senate meeting with Hera because she's disobeyed the rules, and Senator Ziono is upset at her, and Mon Mothma is like trying to remain neutral throughout all of this, and so Hera is called into this New Republic hearing, and Senator Ziono, of course, is giving these doubts and wanting to even court-martial Hera.
Mhm.
And then, of course, probably the coolest surprise of the episode, in my opinion,
Oh yeah.
was that we hear this familiar voice, someone we hold true and dear in our hearts as Star Wars fans. C-3PO came into this scene. In fact, Joey, you said when it happened, you're like, that wasn't on my 2023 bingo card or
That's
something like that.
right.
Yeah.
I mean,
What'd you think about his inclusion
I
in the
think
scene?
I think it's only fair. I feel well, isn't C3PO and R2 the only ones that are in every movie, right?
Yeah, so the only movie I this is another fun fact. I'm glad you said that because I read this today. C-3PO now, I think he held the record anyways before this, but he now holds the record alone for most live action appearances in
Ah,
Star Wars. And he's been in all 11 movies except for Solo.
makes
So
sense. Makes sense.
he's
Yeah, yeah,
been
yeah.
in episodes 1 through 9 and Rogue
And
One,
Rogue One.
which is 10.
Yeah.
Then he's also now been in Obi-Wan and Ahsoka.
Ah, okay.
So so he's been in 12 live action, production or Star Wars productions or whatever, pieces of Star Wars media, which is the current record holder. So
Yeah.
shout out to C-3PO.
Yeah, Anthony Daniels eating good.
Yeah. 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 I'm wondering, okay, just like random thought. How much do you think someone like Anthony Daniels gets paid to have like a 60-second cameo in the episode like he had?
I mean, gosh, I don't even know what the rates would be with something like that. I don't know, like, oh,
Like,
like
is it 7
so,
figures?
no,
You
surely
thi
not. Surely
I didn't
not.
I wouldn't think so.
I surely not. I mean, couple 100,000, I would think.
Like, I have no context for
Yeah.
what something like that would be, only because he's like a huge legacy actor in Star Wars, you know what
Right,
I
right.
mean?
Yeah.
So, I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
wonder what we need to find out what his like appearance fee at like shows are and
Yeah,
kind of and try to figure it out from that.
and then multiply it by 10.
Exactly. Maybe we should, for research purposes, we'll try to get him on this podcast, see
Right.
how much it is, and be like, okay, well, then we could do like a tier list of like the actors through Star Wars, so like you would rate everyone else.
Yeah. Side note, I feel like Anthony Daniels would be just the coolest person to
Hmm.
interview. He seems like he'd be very kind. He's got
Hmm.
that sweet, the sweet British accent, and,
Yes.
it just seems like a really, really cool dude,
And
so
I think I believe I saw him at Celebration, or at least I saw footage of him at Celebration. He can take over a room for sure. So
I
if
bet,
if
yeah.
he were to if we were somehow blessed with his presence here on the podcast, I think you and I would just ask one question, and then an hour and a half later we would have the episode done. So
Yeah. That'd be pretty fun. Yeah, maybe, episode 1000, Anthony Daniels
yeah, yeah,
on.
that's right. Oh yeah, in for our 50th anniversary, maybe.
Yeah, it all ties back, yeah. Also worth mentioning that C-3PO in this scene is representing Leia, to say that she has approved the mission by Hera, and apparently Leia was supposed to be, present at the Defense Council that Senator Ziono was ruling at. So, in a way, she was like, "How dare you have this and not have my opinion when I'm the leader of
Right.
the Defense Council?" Which, obviously unless they wanna do some major CGI work, it would be pretty tough to, like, incorporate Leia into the episode, and so,
Hmm.
um, I thought this was a pretty good way to go about it and, still a little bit fan servicey.
Bless you. Yeah. Yeah,
Excuse
definitely.
me.
Yeah, having C3PO and Leia, I think we would just blow in our mind completely. So I think that to send C3PO here makes sense, and also, you're able to include Leia into the storyline, which I
Right.
appreciate.
Yeah, that was I did appreciate that as well, it was a very sentimental moment without her actually being on the screen. It almost still felt like she was in a way.
That's Star Wars for
Um,
you.
yeah, yeah, which is pretty cool. After we catch the opening scene with Hera and Mon Mothma and Senator Ziono and C-3PO, and I shouldn't leave out your guy Carson Teva. It's important
My
he actually
dude.
had like a little like background side conversation with C-3PO,
Yeah.
when Hera went to talk with Mon
That's gonna
Mothma, which
that's
I was
gonna be in the next from a certain point of view, like what that's the overall, like
yeah,
just that conversation, I believe.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The next scene we go to is Ahsoka and Hu Yang flying through the hyperspace inside the Purgle's mouth, and towards Peridia still, and they're nearing it. But as they're still in the mouth of the Purgle, Ahsoka is training, doing her forms. And the cool part of this episode we get to see is that Anakin is quotes teaching her more or
Mhm.
less. It's in hologram form and it's being recorded during the Clone Wars, obviously, but just a really cool moment. Another way to kind of include Hayden Christensen into the script of the show and give him this scene to
Mhm.
make him feel like he's there, even though we know he's not. He name drops Dooku and Maul and Asajj Ventress, which was I
Yes,
think that's
I
the
thought that
first
was
time.
very cool.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's the first time Asajj has been mentioned in live action.
I would bet on that, but I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure.
Right. And if anyone else knows of a time where she was mentioned in live action, let us know in the comments of the YouTube video. But I heard that and I was like, I don't think we've like
Mhm.
You know by the way, can we talk about a show that I would love to get at some point?
Let's hear it.
An Asajj Ventress show where, we kind of see the entire progression of the character from, being recruited and then working for Dooku and then splitting off and then the Quinlan Voss storyline if they
Mhm.
choose to go the route with the way the book does. Anyway, big
I mean
side note,
I
but
mean, the greatest way to and I think you've mentioned this in the past, a great way to introduce her. I mean, I guess we already did obviously in the Clone Wars, but if we had Tales of the Jedi maybe
right?
series about her, that'd be a
Yep,
good way to, start up that storyline
yep.
and to get a lot more information on her. And, then they can see if how well that, is received, and then, then you get more content on her. That would be great.
Yeah, we need some massage content, that's all I'm saying.
I'm right with it.
The next thing, as the Purgles are exiting hyperspace, Ahsoka is kind of antagonizing Hu Yang during the scene. It makes for a bit of a humorous moment in the episode.
And
And of course,
I want to mention here, as to, a couple episodes back when we had Alex on, when
yeah,
she had mentioned how much more lighthearted Ahsoka is now
yep,
after coming out of the World Between Worlds. So this is another time that we kind of see her smile, cracking jokes with Hu Yang. So
hmm
I think that's I just wanted to note that again. It just seems like we're seeing Ahsoka from a new perspective, kind of what we are used to Ahsoka being,
right.
a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more funny, and maybe that's what had to happen in order for her to get back to this.
Yeah, that's a great thing to point out. I'm glad you said that. There's a noticeable difference in her demeanor in the last episode or two since, going through the whole thing with Anakin and the World Between Worlds. And yeah, I mean, it bears noting because you can see it on her face. And credit to Rosario Dawson for pulling this off as an actor. I mean, it's not like it's a very subtle change in the way she's portraying
Mm-hmm.
Ahsoka, but it's enough to make you notice that Ahsoka feels very emotionally changed by the experience with Anakin. So,
Right.
and this is, another kind of silly example of it, but look in the picture we have here on the video version of the podcast, Ahsoka is smiling. And again, to reiterate, I don't think we saw her smile in the first 4 episodes of this show.
Right, yeah.
So,
I think we did see her smile once, and we even took a screenshot of it because it seemed so off. It looked
right.
kind of confusing to have her actually smile. She was much more of the serious type of Jedi or non-Jedi, whatever. And now we're kind of used to it now that we've seen her, be a little bit happier after this.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a cool way that the writers for this show chose to portray her character through that experience and, to compare it to the Lord of the Rings, similarity that now she's Ahsoka the White, people are calling her,
Right, yeah.
now that she's gone through this change. So, some parallels to Gandalf, perhaps.
And I remember even at during the Rebels finale when she had changed,
Yeah.
when which ends up being part of the first episode here on the Ahsoka. It just seems it's so people took notice of it then, and made those types of references. I mean, she had the huge staff, by the way. Kind of reminds you of Gandalf. So I think they did take some inspiration from that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. The other kind of humorous part about this scene is that as the Purgles are dropping out of hyperspace, um, they, they fly into this minefield that has been laid as a trap, and um, Hu Yang jokingly says, the whales are all in the minefield and they're getting hit by these mines, and he says, at least the whales are providing some cover.
Yeah,
And I don't think he meant it as a joke, but I thought it was kind of funny when he said it. He's
right.
like, well, you know, it didn't seem to be affecting the Purgles too much,
Right, but
interestingly.
it seemed like the Purgles did not like it because they took off right after that.
Yeah, began jumping into hyperspace immediately following getting hit by these mines. And something we also noted during the reaction was that the direction that they jump into hyperspace is past Peridia,
Mhm.
like in the opposite direction that they came from the other galaxy. So I was
Right,
like, well, now where are they going? I thought this was the end of their migration trail.
right.
But after dropping out of hyperspace into the Imperial, or I don't know, are we calling Thrawn the Empire? Like
Well,
post Imperial?
that was what Hu Yang called it, an imperial minefield.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Um, Ahsoka jokingly says, "You had to say something." Yeah, he was like, "I was being optimistic."
What a great
um,
these two have been w- not what I expected from this show. Honestly, like
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting the comedy relief coming from Hu Yang pretty much every time you see him at some point.
Yeah, and there's much more of a kinship between the two of them than I ever would have expected, to have between. I think we're just used to droids generally being um, somewhat inanimate
Hmm.
and not capable of having like, a human
Hmm.
to human or, whatever, alien to alien relationship.
Hmm.
Like we've seen in Star Wars with so many characters. And so the fact that a droid could be as like not just comedic relief, even though he does provide that, but also emotionally impacting as he is, really says something about Hu Yang as a character.
Hmm.
I think I'm okay going on record saying he's my favorite. I hesitate because of R2D2, which is the only reason I hesitate. I think I like Hu Yang more than C3PO. Is that
Yeah,
crazy to say?
I mean, we might get some comments here, but I think that's a take. That's a take for sure. But I
I
mean,
mean,
especially with C3PO's longevity, I think that's always going to
right.
be the question, But I
Yeah.
mean, if you met each droid, side to side here, yeah, I think I would see why Hu Yang would be a favor of the two.
Right. I mean, in the 7 episodes of Ahsoka, Hu Yang has emotionally driven the plot
Hmm.
more, I would argue, more than a C3PO ever
Oh, for
emotionally
sure.
drove the plot of anything,
Oh, for sure.
which I appreciate a lot, but I totally understand, like, the iconic nature
Hmm.
of R2 and C3PO, so,
Well,
it's hard for me to argue that, but
I
right behind them, if you wanna put them 1 and 2, I think you gotta put Hu Yang at 3.
I think we're gonna have to have a droid draft. That's what we're gonna have to
The next draft on the channel, the droid draft. I'm picking Hu Yang first
do.
round, baby.
Yeah, we'll see who gets first pick there.
Yeah, yeah. You gonna steal Hu Yang from me?
Hey, he was number one in all the trade publications. What do you want me to
Yeah,
do?
yeah. After Hu Yang and Ahsoka pass the minefield, they are chased by the fighters, which have been deployed by Thrawn, into the debris field composed of the Purgil skeletons. They eventually manage to make their way into navigating the debris field and being able to hide for a brief amount of time before Thrawn calls them off. I thought it. I want to touch on Thrawn a little bit here. I think this is one of the criticisms, and I feel like it's a fair criticism. I don't know if anyone else would have it or not, but I think the criticism I have of Thrawn, while it's not a giant one, I just feel like they haven't. Um, they did a better job in episode 6, I will say, of kind
Hmm.
of showing his force as a character.
Sure.
I didn't get it as much from episode 7. Um, having said that, I think there's still a lot of room to see that, and I think this was just kind of because it was the 2nd episode we got Thrawn and not the 1st, left me feeling a little bit more wanting
Okay.
in terms of his character. Did you get any of that at all, or am I just kind of, grasping at straws in terms of I like wanting more from Thrawn?
No, I think for me, I thought he had a pretty good role in here. Throughout the episode, he was showing his military prowess of how to, try to get Ahsoka and still get off the island. Or off the island. I'm thinking of Lost. How to get off the planet with all the cargo. And I mean, in all honesty, this episode was about the battle on Pridia. That was the more important part of the episode. And with him being the Grand Admiral, he will be, from a distance doing what he needs to do, with his strategy and all that. So I think I was fine with it. I mean, I could see why other people would want him to be more of a force, but as and my only experience with Thrawn was from Rebels, so I know there's much more lore with EU, and I did read some of the books. I didn't read I think there's 6 books for him, I believe. I only read the first 3, but either way, he's more of a strategic mastermind, and I felt like he showed that in this episode. So I was fine with how that he was portrayed here.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely got the strategy piece. I think oftentimes the reason why I think Thrawn is a great villain is because he breaks the traditional stereotypical mold of what you think a villain
Mhm.
should be sometimes. He's not someone who's gonna like pound his fist and get angry and swing a lightsaber
Right.
and take this forceful demeanor in things that he says. Like he has a oddly passive tone
Mhm.
with this underlying you know, genius level intellect and he doesn't let his emotions control him. And so I can
Right.
appreciate that totally. And I definitely get what you're saying with the strategy piece as well. But um I don't know. I just hope we get a lot of Thrawn in episode 8. Maybe that's the
Mhm.
best way of saying this.
Right, right. I
But
got you.
yeah. Meanwhile, Sabine and Ezra are traveling with the turtle species. I still don't know if we have an official name for this species or whether the language they speak is the name of the species.
Mhm.
I don't know if I should probably look that up. I don't even know if it's been confirmed anywhere or not. But the little the little vehicles they drove,
Yeah,
I
little
don't even.
pods.
Yeah, I don't even remember what comment we made during the episode. Uh, but I just thought it was so funny how slow they were going.
Right.
Like, it felt like a little tricycle,
It
but
was like they were traveling in themselves, like, they were, like I mean, they're very built like turtles also, those pods, because we find out later on that there's, like, a hard covered, hard shell that goes kind of over the top of the pilot's seat,
right.
and it just looks like another turtle, so I thought that was a cute design, and, it was just funny kind of them kinda just rolling along through Pridia, just hanging out, and then later on when we see them get into a little bit of a chase, they do pick up some speed, but at first we were like, "They're not getting away from anything."
Yeah. Yeah, I still don't know because the bandits speak Noti
Right.
and the turtles speak Noti,
Right, yeah.
but I don't know if the turtles are known as the Noti.
Yeah.
I think they are, and if I recall from the last episode, but, maybe someone can let us know that down in the comments. Is that the official name of the turtles, the Noti?
No, it's the Michelangelo and Donatello and
Yeah, the Ninja Turtles, yeah. So while this is going on, as they're traversing across Peridia, Sabine is catching Ezra up on all the events that has happened just in the world of Star Wars, really, since he's been gone. Tells him about the Emperor, just how the fall of the Empire, that Ahsoka had taken her on as her apprentice, and Ezra kind of shockingly responds, "What? What? She? What? Why?" And then he catches himself. He's like, "I mean, congrats," So kind of a cool scene, kind of a throwback to the original trilogy as a whole. It's weird to think about the fact that Ezra just wasn't even in the galaxy during the entire
It's
original
true.
trilogy as it was happening. He was just kind of living as a hermit with these Noti somewhere out in the wastelands of Peridia.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that yeah, when she was catching him up with all that information, it's just weird to it's like, imagine us not seeing Star Wars at
Yeah,
all, and then you end up here, this is where you are, and you're like, "What?" What? So, it's just a different perspective I never even thought of.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He wasn't around for it. He was on vacation. By the way, I don't know how deep you wanna get into, like, theorizing, but I just wanna throw this out here about Ezra.
Let's hear it.
I've seen stuff on social media about the fact he's wearing stormtrooper dog tags around his neck,
Mhm, mhm.
and I saw a lot of theories leading up to episode 7 kind of surrounding Balin's true intentions for being on Peridia, that it has to do with a more ancient evil force potentially,
Mm.
and after episode 7, I read some, like, weird combination of these theories where it's the ancient evil force that's now controlling Ezra potentially. I mean, this is stuff that's, like, way out there.
Wow.
I think it's people really just, like, trying to explain why he might be wearing Stormtrooper dog tags, and also kind of playing on the fact that Ezra has been prone in the past to being vulnerable to the dark side, and
Yes,
so,
yes, absolutely.
um no explanation has really been given as to why that is,
Mhm.
that and again, this doesn't mean that he's bad or anything like that. It's just,
Right.
is a noticeable odd thing about his fashion choice that he's wearing, stormtrooper dog tags. So hopefully we get an answer, maybe a hint at why that might be in the season finale next week. But just thought that was worth throwing out there, especially for all you theorists out there. And then as the conversation with Ezra and Sabine is coming to a close, Balin and Shin find the convoy. I think there's a line where Ezra's like, "Friends of yours," and Sabine says,
Nope.
"Nope."
Yeah.
um, and so this obviously leads up to what we'll talk about in a minute. This pretty epic battle that ensues between Shin and Ezra and Sabine, as well as the bandits and the Noti. But noticeably, well, let me mention one other thing, and then we'll get back to Balin and Shin. That during this time, the Night Sisters are also monitoring the debris field with their magic. I need to know more about these Great Mothers.
Mhm.
Um, about kind of their true intention. Why are they following along with Thrawn? Do they feel like they owe him something, or is their allegiance to him purely just to get off of Peridia?
Right.
I still want to know a little bit more about their intentions, but um, you know, monitoring the debris field. This is how they find Ahsoka's location. Not exactly sure how that is, but it's Night Sister magic, so
With a K.
don't with a K. So don't question it. Ahsoka then calls Sabine through the Force. At the same time, the Night Sisters are able to pinpoint the ship. And then, of course, as we mentioned, Thrawn attacks on the location and sends the fighters after her. Something I noted to you, which this was fresh on my mind because I was reading about it the
Mhm.
day that we reacted to the episode, but um, Ahsoka calling out to Sabine in the Force, and Sabine hears her. To me, you know, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Episode 9. I
Mhm.
think if you've listened to this podcast, you probably know that.
Right.
But an important thing to note about Episode 9 is that Rey hears the voices of all these Jedi as she is facing Palpatine, encouraging her, like pushing her on.
Right.
Um, and Ahsoka is notably one of those voices that she hears and is the only person whose voice she hears that we know, or perhaps that we don't
Don't
know
know.
exactly what her status is at that point in time. But we could almost presume that she's not alive if she's being one of these Force ghosts.
Right.
But now, having had this scene, this makes me think that she might be alive during the sequel trilogy
Right.
if she has harnessed this ability to reach out in the Force as she's displaying here with Sabine. What do you think?
I want that to be that's my new headcanon for sure. I want her to be alive forever. I know a few episodes back when Balin had mentioned, having to kill Ahsoka Tano, that would be a shame or something to that effect. And back then I was mentioning, well, I think they may be preparing us for something later on, maybe not in this season, maybe not in this series, but at some point. So of course for that, I don't want that to happen, but if that were the case, if that is something that she used during that time with Ray, because I can't remember what Ray was saying, because she kept saying something over and over to the Jedi to kind of, band up and, be with her, be with me, something like that. I can't quite remember what she kept saying over and over, but, you know, that means that that's all the Jedi. So wouldn't necessarily mean it would all mean all the dead Jedi at that point. It could be ones that are alive as well, and hopefully Ahsoka is one of them.
Yep. I wouldn't be surprised. Hey, it's headcanon. You heard it here. Meanwhile, Balin and Shin having the conversation that I referenced earlier. Balin says to Shin, kill Sabine Wren and Ezra Bridger and take your place in the coming empire. And of course, the immediate reaction, from any viewer is like, what? What? I mean, is he not going with her? Like, what's he going to do? And Shin has the same, natural reaction that all of us would have. She says, you won't help? And Balin responds with a kind of cryptic, ambiguous statement. He says, "Your ambition drives you in one direction. My path lies in another." So this is really like the first concrete time in his discussions with Shin where he is basically saying, I'm going this way and you're not. You're
Right.
going that way.
Right.
This is where we part ways. Will they be reunited? That we don't really know at this point in time. The foreshadowing would indicate that it's unlikely, or perhaps if it is going to happen, it's going to be at the time of one of their untimely demises.
Right.
Probably more likely Balin, but you know, we'll see. He also has another great quote, maybe the best quote of the episode. Says, "Impatience for victory will guarantee defeat." It sounds like something that Sun Tzu said in The Art of War or something
Yeah.
like that. But I gosh, I've said it so many times the last 6 or 7 weeks. Balin has quickly become, if not my favorite character, the most intriguing character in this show by far.
Mhm.
And I just
Ooh.
I think that's what I'm most excited for next week.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to see like a cool Ahsoka Thrawn showdown. Um, and kind of just get to see how this time on Peridia comes to a close, or if it comes to a close. But the first thing that I am the most excited about is to understand what Balin has been wanting this whole time.
Mhm.
So, uh, I guess we'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end of this podcast. But a great scene with Balin and Shin. Did you have any thoughts on it before we talk about the battle with the bandits and the Noti?
No, I mean, I agree. This was probably one of the better scenes in the episode because it had something concrete, like you said. And here is the fork in the road. I am going left. You're going right.
Yeah,
And the way that even Shin went back to answered him. She knows like this is it. And what I found interesting with the last quote, "Impatience for victory will guarantee defeat," and I'll mention this later in the when she's up against the last against Ahsoka and them, but it's just an interesting last thing to hear from somebody you call it your master, because that's, I mean, that is a those are parting words. I mean,
yeah,
these are not, "Hey, I'll see you next week." These are, "This is my last lesson to you."
yeah, yeah. Man, I just I want to say so much about Balin and Shin, but there is a point that we're gonna make towards the end of the episode, and I'll save my thoughts for then. But we'll come back to it. We'll come back to it. Um, so as they part ways, Shin goes with the bandits to chase the convoy. The little no-T vehicles moving slightly faster now than they did before. They're pulling out their slingshots, and Ezra jokingly says to Sabine, "What? There are peaceful people."
And I mentioned during the reaction, yeah, this very Ezra Bridger, those slingshots, right?
Yep, very true. Very true. Um, However, one of those vehicles does get disabled, and Ezra communicates to the Noti that they kind of form a circle around it in order not to leave anyone behind. And so this was kind of a cool moment to sort of see the cohesion of the group that Ezra has really become a part of, and being sort of a watcher a watcher outer. What am I looking for here?
You can just watch her.
A watcher.
Yeah.
An overseer, how about that,
Yeah, there you go.
for the Noti species? Um, so they form the circle and not to leave it behind. Meanwhile, Ahsoka is being chased by ships. She jumps out of the air, out of the plane that, or the the
The
plane,
ship.
the ship that Hu Yang is flying, and does this crazy somersault that any normal human being would probably have torn their ACLs from, but it's Ahsoka, so, she can do
Yep.
whatever the heck she wants.
Listen, I was a Derrick Rose fan. I know all about torn ACLs,
Yeah, yeah.
and definitely both of them would be gone.
Right, yeah. Yep, RIP Derrick Rose's knees.
Right?
So she jumps out of the T6, lands next to Balin, and, the lightsaber battle ensues. This was also another great moment of the episode. I just I wanted a lot from this battle, and not to say that it wasn't good, because I enjoyed it a lot,
Mhm.
but I was hoping there would be some more finality to it.
Sure.
Like, if not finding out what Balin wanted, at least, like, maybe, like, meeting his end, or I don't know,
Right,
just
right, right.
something consequential with Balin I was really looking forward to in this lightsaber fight, and it didn't really happen,
Mhm.
But another thing worth pointing out is at the conclusion of the fight, Ahsoka was sort of like, um, she was almost had this peaceful look on her face
Yeah.
where Balin says, "You can't defeat me." And I wish I could remember her exact quote, but it's something to the effect of like, I know.
Perhaps I don't have to.
Right, perhaps I don't have to.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then she uses the smoke screen of Hu Yang shooting to kinda get away and rejoin Ezra and Sabine, um, battling the bandits and Shin. And so, meanwhile, the 2 gunships arrive, which Thrawn has sent as reinforcements for Shin um, and the bandits. And so, at the same time, Thrawn notices that Balin is noticeably absent from the attack party. And so, perhaps instilling, uh, or maybe even confirming a sense of doubt that Thrawn had within Balin. You kind of got hints of distrust from Thrawn towards Balin and Shin, not
Mhm.
only because he's willing to leave them on Peridia if necessary, but also because Balin is a former Jedi, which obviously Thrawn is
Right.
extremely distrustful of. And so, Thrawn notices Balin has disappeared. Meanwhile, the night troopers surround the convoy, and Ahsoka joins in, and the 3 of them proceed to go absolutely ham on some night troopers. We were also looking out for this part to see if there was some Night Sister magic that would exude from the night troopers when they were killed.
Right.
Um, Not to be seen in this scene, so we can assume that these are probably just people who have been here the whole time on Peridia with Thrawn, and they're not, reinvigorated? I don't
Right.
think that's the right word, but,
Reanimated?
they're reanimated, thank you, yes. They're not reanimated Dathomiri, in this Night Trooper armor. It's just people. So, can you imagine being stuck on Peridia for 10 years and then, some Jedi comes around with a lightsaber and just
Slices you
that's
up.
that's the end. "We were here for 10 years and we almost made it." Uh So after this defeat in the battle, Shin, withdraws, and the bandits have all been defeated. And so Thrawn withdraws the troops and blames the loss on Balin. But he also says that it's an acceptable loss because the cargo is almost loaded, as we get a little image in the episode, kind of denoting that it looks like it's, I don't know, 90% ready to go. And so,
We still
we
don't
can
know what is in there.
right. Still don't know what the cargo is. The pieces of cargo definitely look like there could be bodies in. I'm just saying. I
Yep.
don't know if that's what it is or not, but
Looks like to
could
me.
be. Yeah. Uh, and then Thrawn also has a great line where he says, "Ahsoka Tano has lost something she could not afford to lose today." And credit to you, you got it immediately. You said it in the reaction. You were like time before he even said it.
You're
And
right.
I'm sitting over here thinking like, what is he gonna say?
Am I
But
am
yeah,
I am I a genius? Am I a strategic mastermind? I'm a little scared now.
yep, yep. Joey is Thrawn. But yeah, so Ahsoka has lost critical time, and
I'm
the
I am a little interested in that line though because it seems like he knows something about her time and what she needs to do with it because it seems like very heavy-handed the way that line was delivered. So I'm thinking that there's a little bit more to this line than it just kind of being a cool line. I feel like it's going to be something more.
okay, interesting. I mean, I'm sure we'll find out next week what that might be.
Right.
Whether you mean like regarding the cargo, like the fact that it needs to be all on board in order for the time to be achieved, or what are you getting at? You think?
Well, I think more he knows something about Ahsoka. That's what I'm saying. That there's something he
Oh,
understands about her. Oh, because when they did their little reconnaissance on her, finding out that she was taught by Anakin Skywalker, he was very interested in all that. So I feel like he's got a little bit more intel that he hasn't shared quite yet.
I see. Okay, I like this theory. I like it. I can definitely see this being the case. But yeah, we will definitely be finding out if that's the case next week, hopefully. Meanwhile, the troops flee from the battle, and Ahsoka chooses to spare Shin. Shin had a real moment where it looked like she was gonna sort of, accept Ahsoka's offer to put down her weapon and go with the 3 of them, but, ultimately chooses to run away. And as Sabine, or I think it's Sabine and not Ezra, begins to pursue, um, that,
Mhm.
um,
Just kinda holds her back.
yeah, she just kinda holds her back, and that's gonna become critical later on in the show, more than likely. Even if it's not in season 1, there will definitely be a moment in the rest of this show where Shin, is confronted with Ahsoka again, and perhaps it's even like, Ahsoka is on the ropes. Shin is, the
Mhm.
sidekick to whoever is the one that has Ahsoka on the
Right.
ropes, and, in a moment of desperation, Ahsoka kind of just, like, looks at Shin and asks for help, and,
Yep. She gives it.
Shin might be the person to provide it in the
Right, yeah.
future.
I could absolutely see that coming, but I wanna talk a little bit more about Ahsoka saying, "I can help you." I mean,
Yeah,
help. That's an interesting word in that sentence. What would she be doing to help her? Would she be training her? Would she be, because obviously she knows that she's force sensitive and she has, these abilities. I would just be
right.
curious in, what she meant when she was saying, "I can help you."
I
Just
think
seems like a again another word that really could mean a lot more than just a kind of a
right.
throwaway sentence.
Yeah, I mean, the way I took it is that Ahsoka is very much aware of the, I guess if we want to call it unrest or definitely uncertainty within Shin.
Hmm.
She's probably sensing it. I
Sure,
would
yeah, that makes
guess
sense.
that, especially having, departed from her master, and now she's like, what the heck am I doing out here in this other galaxy? Like, I don't even know if I'm going to see my master again, and I'm serving this blue guy with red eyes, and, like, what am I doing now? So I just think
Right.
there's probably a lot of uncertainty from coming from Shin, and so I think Ahsoka, just being Ahsoka, especially post episode 5 Ahsoka, is kind of just sensing that, and understanding that, like, in a way, there's this cry for help coming from Shin, even if it's not like a verbal cry for help. So, um, yeah, I really liked that scene, and again, that's gonna come back around, and I think gonna benefit Ahsoka in the long run. So,
Mhm.
um, but yeah, meanwhile, the uh, after Ahsoka says, "Surrender your weapon, I can help you," Sabine says to Ahsoka, "I thought you were dead." And then Ahsoka says, "And miss this reunion?" Of course, Sabine didn't even tell Ezra that, according to Sabine, in her own mind, Ahsoka was dead.
Right.
And so this is a little bit of a surprise in all regards to everyone present. And so there's a cool reunion with Ahsoka and Ezra, and says, "Guys, I'm getting a feeling I think I might be going home after all," which is a pretty sweet moment as well. So, little does he know that it's not gonna be quite as easy as
Right.
he might think, as we'll probably see in next week's episode. But, ultimately, that is the conclusion of the episode, and, um, yeah, the main questions outlying being, what is the cargo that
Mhm.
Thrawn is putting, on his Star Destroyer? What is Balin's true motive? What is he gonna do? How does Shin play into that? And perhaps the main storyline being, how are the 3 of our protagonists here, 4 if you wanna include Hu Yang, how are they going to deal with the threat of Thrawn? Or will they deal with the threat of Thrawn? I guess there's a chance that Thrawn could leave them on Peridia. I don't know. There's lots of different directions next week's episode could go, so, a lot of exciting stuff here in regards to that. But having gone through the entire episode, how do you feel about giving our favorite moments?
Sure, yeah, let's do it.
Alright, you want me to go first? Or you wanna go first?
You can go first.
Okay. Well, I've alluded to mine already, because I noted that I'd mention it again at some point in the podcast, and in our podcast notes, under the favorite moment from the episode, I simply wrote Balin. Which I think is also my favorite moment from last week's episode too, meaning that while it's not the most flashy, even though he did have a cool lightsaber battle, while it's not the most flashy moments of the episode and the most like, "Holy cow, how what's happening?" sort of moments, um, it's the most mysterious, it's the most intriguing, it is the most alluring. I need to know what Balin's plan is, and if
Mhm.
I don't know by the end of next week, I'm going to be very sad.
Mhm.
So, this conversation he has with Shin is very impactful towards the overall scope of the episode because it creates the separation between the two. It creates the uncertainty within Shin, perhaps even distrust between her and Balin. We don't really know what their relationship is going to look like going
Mhm.
forward now, and so, um, yeah, I just Also worth noting that, the 2 great quotes, I read them earlier, but I'll read them one more time. Balin says to Shin in this conversation, "Your ambition drives you in one direction. My path lies in another." He then also says, "Impatience for victory will guarantee defeat." So more or less, we're gonna split ways here, and after we split ways, don't be too hasty in trying to win because you'll lose. Is kind of what he's saying. So, um, yeah, and again, apart from the really awesome lightsaber battle he has with Ahsoka, which is one of my other favorite parts of this episode. Um, just the character of Balin is incredibly enticing to me, and, again, I'll bring up the theory stuff, this might be over theorizing, and I can totally see that. It's probably nowhere near what's actually gonna be the case next episode, but is there this larger evil
Mhm.
force? Or I guess it doesn't even have to be evil. Is there just a larger force looming on Peridia that Balin is somehow aware of that Thrawn and Elsbeth and the Great Mothers aren't, that he's seeking? Is he going to find it if he is seeking it? If he does find it, what is he gonna do with it? What is his
Right.
goal? I wanna know. I wanna know. That's so any part of Balin has typically been my favorite part of the last 2 weeks especially, but
Mhm.
really just the whole season of Ahsoka. So
Then
I gotta go with Balin.
you're not gonna like what I'm gonna say right here then, is
Uh-oh.
that
Uh-oh.
I don't think Balin is gonna be in the next episode. I think this I
Oh,
think that this the way that he ended this part here, he is just not in the next episode at all. He will be in later, he will be in mid season 2. He has escaped. We will not see Balin in the season finale.
really? I didn't
That
even
is how
consider that.
that's the way I see his character going. And I mean, now that I've said it, you can kind of see that this could be kind
Right.
of the story's end for, we know Thrawn's after him. We know he's got this other path. They're not going to wrap it all up next week. That's more information to come later. I could see that being a season 2 storyline.
Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying. I mean, my only thing would be, obviously this was filmed before Ray Stevenson passed away.
Right.
Um, and so that could totally make sense. But then the question is, will we ever see Balin again in this show?
Right.
Um, Gosh, if this week is the last time we got to see Balin, oh, can you I mean, I'll be upset, not like mad, but I'll just be
Right.
sad that
Yeah.
that's how the character concluded.
Right.
I
I
just think the fans in general will be so upset that that's
Oh,
I don't know.
yeah, I think even with that information, and I don't think they would have less necessarily written around the unfortunate and untimely passing of Ray Stevenson, but I feel like that could have gone either way. I think that not obviously not knowing that this really could have been the end of his story just for this season, and
Right.
for it to save for next season. So I could be wrong, but that's kind of where my mind went with this character.
And I can see it. I can see it. Okay. Well, okay, how about you? What was your favorite moment from the episode 7?
I did want to mention how cool it was to see Hayden Christensen one more time
Yeah.
during that. It wasn't necessarily my absolute favorite moment of the episode, but honorable mention, that was really cool to see Ahsoka training. One, to see Ahsoka training at all, and then two, to see Hayden as Anakin one more time, and three, to see her little closet locker of like all those hilts. If you remember, when I looked at it later, there were some training droids in there as well. So it was just cool to see, just a little behind the quote unquote non Jedi closet there. So yeah, that was definitely one of them. But then the big thing was just the overall the battle on Pridia was just so cool, and how it concluded with. Uh, Honestly, I think Ezra having this actor here really has brought a lot of this warmth to me.
Yeah.
Seeing his interaction with Sabine, you kind of remember how they used to kid with each other. Just really bringing that family vibe back into the series here, which and I loved. And again, in this screenshot we have here, another smile from Ahsoka being so happy to be around them all together again. So this show is just so good at, and I've said it time and time again, those interweavings between shows and books and comics and movies and, everything. This show is doing a really good job at, putting it, being that those Venn diagrams, they're
Yeah.
they're that little circle right in the middle of all of that, and it's been very enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, I think one of my biggest concerns when Ahsoka was announced was how they were going to do how the casting for these characters was going to turn out.
Right, right.
And I'm very pleased with the way
Me
that the
too.
actors are, just they've done an excellent job of portraying the Rebels characters, and you know, it doesn't feel weird. It feels really
Right.
natural and normal. So yeah, a feeling of warmth. It's
Yeah,
really cool.
absolutely.
So I will say before we grade the episode, do you think there's even like a slight hint of evil hidden within Ezra, or do you think he's kind of like a peaceful,
I
ascetic Jedi right now?
Right now, I'm feeling he's in the peaceful state. I mean, I could definitely see he could still maybe be swayed, because he's kind of been on his own this entire time. So maybe he hasn't had, more advanced training into being able to combat any of that. But I think for the most part, he's kind of on that lighter side.
Yeah.
How about
Okay.
you? How
Okay.
about you? What are your thoughts?
I get the same impression. I really didn't have an inkling of the fact that he had this evilness to him until I saw these things online that were like, "Why is he wearing stormtrooper,
Right, right,
tags on his neck?" And I was like, I could see them going that direction, but I don't really want it to go that
right,
direction.
right.
So I don't know. I think it's unlikely, if I had to guess. But anyways, yeah, a pretty epic conclusion to the episode with the battle between the bandits, the Noti, Shin, Ezra, Sabine, and Ahsoka. So pretty cool to see there. And then um, really the only thing that's left for us to do is give the episode a rank out of 10. I'm gonna go 9, Joey. I'm gonna go
Hmm.
9. I think this is the first episode I haven't given a 10 since episode 4.
Right. I think you agree. Was it 9.5 when you first came out of the episode?
Yes.
Yeah.
So when we reacted yesterday to it, I think I initially gave it a 9.5.
Hmm.
And the more I thought about it, I think I I just there wasn't anything in the episode that was like uh capturing as the world between worlds stuff in episode 5 with
Sure.
Anakin and Ahsoka. Um and I was comparing it really to episodes 5 and 6,
Hmm.
and while I still loved this episode, don't get me wrong, the more I thought about it, the more I was like, yeah, I think there is like a little gap between
Sure.
episodes 5 and 6 and 7. So, um, I knocked it down half a point from a 9.5 to a 9.
Fair. Fair.
Not for any particular reason. I mean, the New Republic scene at the beginning was necessary for sure. But at the same time, if C3PO wasn't in it, I would have probably been like,
Yeah.
okay. Um, So he definitely elevated that scene a lot, which was understandably why he was probably placed in that scene to make it,
Hmm.
not just like a throwaway first 10 minutes of the episode sort of thing, but not throwaway, but you know what I mean.
Excuse me,
Not it.
Carson was in that
Yeah.
10 minutes.
Yeah.
All right.
Carson Teva, Um, having said all that, there wasn't as much Thrawn in
Yeah.
this episode as I was kind of hoping. We
Mm-hmm.
kind of
That's
got
true.
these like 20 to 30-second glimpses of him as Ahsoka and Hu Yang were doing things, but it wasn't ever really like Thrawn's
Hmm.
story. So that was another thing I thought about. So that's why I gave it a 9 out of 10. How
Nice.
about you?
I actually went up on my grade.
Yeah, I think we
Initially,
switched.
yeah, we actually switched. Yeah, so I gave it a 9 initially, but after doing the rewatch and you know doing these podcast notes that we do, for every episode, yeah, I really enjoyed it the second time around. More so, the Battle of Peridia was just really, and even during the reaction, you saw me like kind of saying, "Oh, what not? What's going to happen now?" And so they did a really good job with the pacing of it. And when you're in these battles, there's always like multiple things going on, and I think they balanced it really, really well. So, and again, that warmth that you get from the family of Sabine and the rebels, with Hera and with Ezra, I think they captured that really well, and then Ahsoka in there as well. So I think all of that to say that it elevated it from like an emotional standpoint. So I gave it a 9.5, just to bump it up 0.5 from yesterday's grade.
Nice. And again, we're both still pretty high on this episode. It
Absolutely, yeah.
was one of the better ones of the entire season, I would also say. So, um, very last thing we want to do is somewhat of almost like I don't know if we want to call it like a new segment of the podcast, but we're posing a big question to
Hmm.
conclude the podcast. So
And
maybe we can get some like audio effects that say, like,
yeah,
big question.
right. And I mean, I was pretty much setting this question up here to
Right,
to shock
right.
you as well.
Yes, this week's big question is, will we see Balin Skull in the finale? Let us know either on social media or in the comments of the YouTube video what your thoughts and opinions are. Will we see Balin Skull in episode 8 of Ahsoka? I sure hope so. I'm gonna take the yes side just because I want it so
That's
badly,
fair.
but let us know down in the comments and on social media what your thoughts are as well.
I'll be expecting after the finale, there's going to be hashtag saying hashtag Joey was right.
Yeah. Oh, please no, I want Balin so bad. But well, we appreciate you all so much for listening to this one. On next week's episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast, we will be covering the series finale, hopefully just the season finale, but for the time being, the series finale of Ahsoka, which will be episode 8 of this season. It is going to hopefully be mind blowing. We will also be doing a reaction to the episode as well. That reaction will become available on Wednesday morning next week. The podcast, as always, will become available Thursday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, as will this podcast become available on September 28th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. If you have any other thoughts or questions for us, Star Wars or otherwise, make sure you can always send those to us over on Twitter. You can send us a DM on Instagram, or you can email us hothhangout@gmail.com. If you are not subscribed to the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel, we want to encourage you to head on over there and hit that big red subscribe button because we would very much appreciate it. We want to thank the 330 of you who are currently subscribed to the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel. So thank you so very much there. If you're an audio podcast listener, thanks as always for listening, whether it's on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to leave the Hoth Hangout podcast a 5-star review, and we would appreciate it so very much. And of course, you can check us out on the socials at TikTok, Instagram, and X at Hoth Hangout on each of those. Normally, this would be the part where we say thank you, Gibbo, for producing the show. Gibbo did produce a lot of the assets for today's show, but I also want to give a special shout out for this show because guess what? We didn't mention it at the beginning. Joey was kind of behind the scenes producing this episode as we went along. So if you're watching the video version of the podcast, which I will say was incredibly smooth for someone who was hosting the podcast and doing the scene changes. So, Joey, yeah, shout out to you, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. If you don't see the bees of sweat from the entire episode.
Yes, yes. And also do want to give a special note courtesy of the episode notes here. Shout out to Gibbo for being the third Dathomirian Night Sister with us and our black magic with a K.
With a K.
That about does it. You got any last thoughts, Joey, before we close?
Uh I'm sad that this is coming to an end. The season, hopefully just the season, not the series, right? But we will be back next week. This is so much. This is probably the best Star Wars that I've seen in a very long time. Of course, we hate to see it end, but I hope it goes out with a bang.
And I hope we get to see Balin.
We're not going to see Balin.
No, I think we will get a season 2 in the future. I'd be shocked if we don't.
Same, I agree.
Season 1, the end is looming, and we'll be arriving next week. As I said before, we'll be reacting to the episode. That video will go live Wednesday morning. The podcast with the breakdown and the discussion will go live Thursday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, as every single episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast always does. Shout out to George Lucas. Shout out to Dave Filoni. Shout out to Night Sister Magic, Ahsoka, and Thrawn. We'll be back next week to catch all the Ahsoka season finale action. We're going to be so excited for that one. We hope all of you are too. Thank you so much, as always, for listening to the Hoth Hangout podcast. This has been episode 51. Thank you again for listening. We appreciate each and every single one of you, and may the Force be with you.